Jamaican police and soldiers have been accused by the country's public defender of murdering at least 44 of the 76 people that died during the West Kingston incursion in 2010. But to what extent did the US play a role? We speak now with investigative journalist Mattathias Schwartz, who wrote an award-winning piece on the incursion for the New Yorker magazine. He joins us via Skype from Brooklyn, New York. Welcome to the program, Matt.
Hi, Zara. I'm glad to be here.
You're a New Yorker journalist. Why did you even think about doing this story on Tivoli?
I just visited Jamaica for fun in 2010, and then I just met people there on the street who told me what happened during the extradition. And what they told me was so different from what had been printed in the news that I figured if a tenth of what they were saying was true, then I really needed to look into it and dig further.
I was personally surprised by the kind of interest the United States took in Jamaica.
It's clear that the U.S. and Jamaica have a very strong relationship, and that the U.S. was deeply involved in asking the government of Jamaica to allow the extradition to proceed.
The former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Bruce Golding, testified earlier this year in 2015 that he made a request for U.S. surveillance help on May 25th, and he only learned about a U.S. surveillance plane on May 24th from your article. Let's listen to a clip of what he had to say.
From his reporting, a plane was in place on Monday the 24th. My request through the U.S. Charge of Affairs was made on the afternoon of Tuesday the 25th.
What does it say to you that there was a request by him on the 25th, and yet previous to his request there was already a plane in the air on the 24th?
You would imagine that someone from the Jamaican government or the Jamaican military would be aware, but who exactly was informed, how that authorization proceeded, that's just one of the many unanswered questions here.
Isaiah Parnell seemed to have said that if the request was granted, they would follow up instead of with the government, but more so with the JDF. What do you make of the relationship between the Jamaican Defense Force, which is the soldiers of Jamaica, and the United States?
I know from documents I have that the U.S. military regularly trains members of the JDF. One thing we do know is that there was a facility on the ground in Jamaica while the incursion was happening, carrying information from the Department of Homeland Security plane to this center, and then passing it on to the ground while this operation was taking place, during the time which more than 70 people were killed. So it's very hard for me to look at this picture and see how the United States does not have some complicity and even some degree of arguably direct involvement in these deaths.
One of the police officers we spoke with mentioned that he believed he had interacted with U.S. personnel on the ground during the events of West Kingston. Do you know if there were any foreign agents or agents of the United States government on the ground at the time during the Tivoli incursion?
There were definitely people who were there beforehand to assess the security situation. There were also specially deployed U.S. people who were there to help protect the embassy during the situation as it escalated. Were there any U.S. agents on the ground in Tivoli Gardens on May 24th and May 25th? Again, I don't know.
On May 21, Lloyd Moss from the U.S. government wrote in an email, "A major assault appears unlikely before Tuesday." Now, Tuesday would have been May 25th. The incursion was May 24th. But writing on May 21, he says, "A major assault appears unlikely before Tuesday. However, there is always the risk that members of the JCF and JDF might come under fire while probing the barricades, which might lead to large-scale action." Matt, to me, this says the United States government knew there was going to be a major assault.
It's clear that on May 21, a major assault on Tivoli Gardens was on the horizon of U.S. Embassy security staff as a significant possibility for how this might unfold.
If the United States was in fact complicit, your words, I ask, what can the residents of West Kingston do in an instance like this? Should they be bringing a case against the United States government for their losses of life?
You would need to talk to, I think, a human rights lawyer to know the answer to that.
On the point of the US's complicity, sections of documents that you asked for have been redacted. What role should be played by whether it's local journalists, the Jamaican government, civil society in Jamaica, or even the residents of West Kingston when it comes to trying to get a fuller picture of what exactly happened on the ground between the United States government working alongside the Jamaican government?
The Commission of Inquiry has been charged with getting to the bottom of this. They need to ask Parliament and ask the government of Jamaica and ask the Prime Minister to formally request that the United States turn over all of the documents and all of the intelligence and all of the other material that they have regarding this massacre and the Coke extradition. If they fail to do that, it's hard for me to see how they can dispense with their obligations in full.
Mattathias Schwartz, as always, thank you so much for shedding some insight into what really happens between the United States and Jamaica.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
That's Mattathias Schwartz. He's an investigative journalist that writes for the New Yorker magazine, joining us via Skype from Brooklyn, New York. The preceding segment